Hey, good morning. It is Thursday, July 25th, and my name is Rob. I am that developer dad. So I had a D&D session last night at my local gaming shop, and I wanted to take this thing over there and show some of the other DM folks what I'm working on. And they were suitably impressed until I ran it and I said, yes, I want to pick. Hey, let's make a Dragonborn. I don't know what their background is. I don't know what their vacation is. And it seemed to work okay here, but, and it's working okay now because I've already fixed the issue. Let me revert that change real quick and I'll show you again. So if I go into the complexion where we're picking one, Dragonborn don't have any defined skin colors. And so I was passing an empty array in here. So when this is commented out and I try to run it, yes, I do want to pick, and I want a Dragonborn. It goes boom because it can't pick the first element in the working copy of the array because the array is empty. There is no first element. And I had to get ready to run my game last night. And luckily, this bug only showed itself when I was demonstrating to my players, not the other DMs. But it underscores the importance of proper testing. And I just realized I was on full cam. So let me re-demonstrate that here. So I added these two lines this morning, and that's why I had a late start, because I wanted to debug this, because it was bothering me. So without this length 0 check and returning default, and I have to return default because this is a generic method, and I don't know what the result might be. So do I want to pick any of the NPC attributes? Yes. If I choose Dragonborn, randomize the rest, it goes kaboom because working copy doesn't have any elements and I'm trying to access element 0. And so it kind of freaks out, indexes outside the bounds of the array. So I was able to track down what's happening this morning. And so now I'm working to fix it. I could just return default, but for some types, the default value is going to be empty or null. So do I want to change the contract on this so that it might return a nullable of T? I think I have to. Now that's going to have some implications. I don't want to rename. I want to go to the definition. Here we go. So we're going to return T. It might be null. An array of T representing a finite set of options to choose from, one of the cards in the deck. If the deck has no cards, this value may be null. And now we've got a bunch of warnings here in my compiler, and I want to fix these. So I've got a possible null reference return. I have to change this over to nullable of T. So we'll save that one. And I want to fix these warnings right now before they turn into runtime errors. So over here, shuffler pick one. Because gender option is a string, string.empty. Gender option. Let's add a guard clause around here. If string.is null or white space around gender option. And I don't want that. I want equals false. No. Else we'll get the pronouns for the gender. Cut that. Paste it in here. npc.pronouns equals template dot, did I set it up as default? Default gender choices. Do I have default pronouns? Default pronoun mapping. Let's go see what that is. Let's go to the definition up here. Default pronoun mapping. Ambiguous. I'm going to just have to grab this. Come down here. V. And I really don't like copying and pasting these magic strings. So that identifies a refactoring I need to do. I'm also not in, I really don't like ambiguous. I'm just going to turn that into a GitHub issue. And open link in new window. No, I want to do it in a tab group or a tab. Let's come over here. My gut feeling is to Boy Scout this and just fix it now, but that's not what I want to focus on today. So we have some magic strings in species template that are going to cause problems. Nine of 12 is asking in the chat that ambiguous is accurate, and am I going to be able to make that a different percentage of the results? And I've been thinking about things like that because right now when we're selecting a random species or any of these things that are sort of randomized, all of the choices are equally weighted. I would like to be able to add some weighting to the different choices in these lists, but that would be a much more complex operation, and I haven't quite figured out how to do that weighting yet. And also how I would go about adjusting that weighting for different scenarios, not only on a user by user basis, but also on a location by location or a species by species basis. It could well be that in somebody's game world, 75% of the elves are gender ambiguous. And, you know, we might have 10 that identify absolutely as male and 15 that identify absolutely as female. And in somebody else's game world, they could be, well, no, there is only the gender dimorphism. No other options exist. And so I would need a way to account for those customized weightings within say like a set of characters or a user's profile or what have you. I do want to add some kind of choice weighting eventually, but it's not going to be part of this first kick at the can. People can't yet choose the gender. I haven't built that choice in yet. Although that is going to be a choice that's available when there's a better interface than a console app. All of these things that are currently being completely randomly generated without prompting in the console, those will be selectable options when I move to turning this into an application with a user interface. But we have some magic strings in the species template that are going to cause problems later in the code. Fix them. And I'm going to pull this right up to the top of my to-dos, and I'm going to turn it into an issue assigned to myself right now. And we'll convert it, GM tools. And yes, this is going to be part of the MVP. I do want to fix this. Edit. This is a technical debt issue that must be resolved before we finish the MVP. These magic strings are leaking out into the managers, into the workload coordinators, and that severely reduces the flexibility of these components. Save. Labels. Do I have a label for technical debt? I don't, but I'm gonna. Let's edit our labels. And we're going to add a new label, technical debt. And let's just go with that. That's fine. I'm going to go back. And come down here and select tech debt. And the milestone, I don't have a milestone set up. I'm not going to set up a branch for it, but we're good. All right. So create some automation around testing and building locally. That I need to still turn that into an issue. Let's do it now. I'm going to assign myself. Let's make this official. GM tools. Label it as testing. Here we go. Edit this. Create some automated processes for building and testing that we can quickly inject into different phases of our development work. Build as part of the pre-commit checks. Don't commit what won't compile. Big maybe here. run tests as part of the pre-push process. Don't push to origin with failing tests. This, and I can use Markdown here. This might do better as part of the post-push or pre-merge phase running only on the server. Sometimes we want to push from local to origin, whether it's in a good state or not. Yeah, okay. So let's save this. It's definitely part of GM tools. It's part of testing. It's also part of, do I have an infrastructure work? I do. Planning question, technical debt. All right. Yeah. So the work we're doing today and probably tomorrow is focused on this. And I didn't want to spend a bunch of time chasing down the things that bother me and so on, when I really want to be focusing on getting some build and test automation happening. However, I did run into this defect last night, and I want to fix that before I keep moving forward on my project. And I've got one more possible null ref warning over here. Complexion, if it's null, we know we're looking for a string here. String.empty. Save that. Now, up above where I was picking the gender, like this is that magic string I was talking about, and I think I want to convert that to an enum. Possibly. Because in other rule sets, the gender selections may be considerably more flexible or volatile or variable even, especially if I start thinking about setting up custom, like user custom rule sets where they can define their own lists for all of these things, and then the system would use their selections and their world configurations for making all of these random selections. That's a down the road version 2 or 3 thing. So I'm not super concerned about it yet, but I definitely like to get the patterns better established now. And having those patterns in place will make our first kick at it a lot more viable in terms of making it possible to add new stuff to it later. Because if you create a prototype and release that as your minimum viable product, and it's a real pain in the neck to fix, or you basically, if you want to make a change, you got to rewrite the whole thing, I don't consider that viable. Because when you're doing an MVP, the intent is always to let's get the least amount of functionality that we have to out there, with the intention of adding all of the, this would be really cool, this would be nice to have, this is important, but not to get us started type stuff. But having extensibility and flexibility built into your initial code base that people are going to be working in It's incredibly important for the future viability of your product or your system that you make sure that it is changeable and flexible at the code level. And I've had that argument with product managers and agile people and so on, and I've backed off. And then 3 months later, they were like, hey, you were right. I wish you hadn't have backed off. And I'm like, yeah, me too. So I'm going to stop backing off on it. It's going to make me harder to hire. But the people that see my point of view right up front and hear what I say, they're going to be much happier for it. All right, so we're out of compiler warnings at this point. I want to rebuild, not under debug, rebuild. We're going to get a couple of compiler warnings back, but I'm not worried about those ones because they've been hanging around for a while and they haven't reared their ugly heads. I wanted to fix the defect I encountered last night when I was showing this off. So we've got that. We've got our 3 changes. Before I even commit, I do want to run the app to make sure. And yes, let's do a Dragonborn again because we know that's where a problem was happening. We'll just randomly pick everything else. And we have got all the things. And skin color is not showing up because Dragonborns don't have visible skin color. They're covered in scales. And let's go ahead and throw this at the AI. This will take a minute or two just while it shakes its head and crunches. And I do kind of want to watch it back here on the server to make sure it's not going to sleep or crashing on me or anything like that. And I did notice the other day when I was testing this that sometimes it would return nothing at the end because it would generate too many tokens and return me an empty string. That's another defect that I'm going to have to track down sooner than later. But it has been inconsistent in terms of reproducing the issue. So we're just going to run, doing its thing. And yes, even though I'm doing all of this on my Windows laptop that I found and repurposed for doing this stuff, I ran this whole application natively on my MacBook Air with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it was actually felt faster than running on this older Windows machine. And that made me kind of happy. Wow. What's her name? Oh yeah, the name doesn't get randomly generated yet. Because I noticed that the AI is doing a pretty good job with that. But she's tall. She's like almost 6 foot. I bet she's looking for a man in finance. Weighs 108 kilograms. She's got shiny silver scales. She is an explorer. No, she used to be a hermit. Sounds actually like one of the NPCs in my campaign. Roams far and wide in search of ancient secrets, driven by a restless spirit that refuses to settle down, left with a profound sense of solitude, but also a wealth of knowledge gleaned from her extensive travels. Golly, for a local small token count, small training set language model, I am consistently impressed with how good this 5.3 mini model does running locally on my own not fancy hardware. All right, so we've got our deck simulator working. We've eliminated the bug. We've done quite a lot of branch cleanup this morning as well. I noticed yesterday when I was wrapping up the stream that I had a number of older branches that some were behind main and the rest were ahead. And I was like, I've got changes that I've implemented that I haven't merged into the main branch. And I'm going to get myself into a world of hurt if I don't resolve that. So we're going to do that today too. This morning's stream seems to be all about quality and protecting ourselves from ourselves. And I'm okay with that because sometimes it's important to pause from moving forward at full tilt and coding like a crazy person in pursuit of more and more features and stuff like that. And it's valuable sometimes to slow down and step back a little bit and just do a quick check-in with yourself and your code and make sure that you're not setting yourself up to trip over your own feet sooner rather than later, as is usually the case. So this set of commits fixes a defect that occurs when trying to choose one item from a list with 0 items in it. And I'm going to call this a crashing defect. Now, I use the term defect, and I'm pretty, it's one of those battles that I like to say, yeah, I'll die on this hill. I also need to add a new GitHub item. App crashes during random generation when a choice list has 0 choices. App crashed, app crashes. And I'm adding these issues and bugs and stuff like that publicly on the GitHub, just for accountability and transparency's sake. I mean, yeah, I'm the only developer. I'm the only stakeholder on this project. But I'm building it publicly, and I'm using this project to demonstrate what it's like to work in software. And we're going to get bugs. We're going to get defects. And when we do, it's very, very important to let the people around us know, hey, we got an issue over here. I'm working on it, but be aware that it's there. And that was a mistake that I made early on in my career, where I was just absolutely terrified of letting people know when something I had built wasn't behaving itself. And so I just turtle up in my office and I'd close the door and I'd put my I'd put my headphones in and I'd disappear from the world. And that behavior was no good for the company I was working for at the time. It was very bad for my own mental and even physical health because I did it for so long. It led to burnout and serious imposter syndrome and all that stuff. And to be fair, I was kind of afraid of my bosses because frequently they would behave in a scary, intimidating way. So I would turtle and I just dive in and fix the problem, maybe. And I was still very junior in my coding abilities and my abilities to communicate and all of that stuff. And it caught up to me. And I got ill. I became ill. And then when I left that company, by mutual decision, weighted towards theirs, I knew it was time to leave, but they made the choice for me. This was many, many years ago. I stopped being so afraid of saying, hey, I screwed this up. And my the entire trajectory of my career changed from that point when I let go of that fear of making mistakes. And to developers of every level of experience, you can't afford to be afraid of making mistakes, and you can't afford to give into the behaviors that fear might encourage. To managers or people who are supervising developers, it's exceptionally important that you create and nurture an environment where mistakes are expected and model the behavior that you want to see when somebody makes a mistake. Make sure your people feel safe in admitting when they did something incorrectly, and then work together to find out how the mistake happened and how it can be prevented in the future. For the good of the industry, please take that advice. Now for this, back to my own situation, I'm just adding this bug for accountability purposes. When selecting a Dragonborn character to generate, the app would crash when trying to choose a skin color. Dragonborn don't have choices for skin color because they have scales, and the only thing under their scales is pain. If you take all the scales off a Dragonborn, you get a dead Dragonborn. Let's label this as a bug, and I really hate the word bug. I know its origins. I know a lot of QA folks really prefer to call them bugs rather than defects, and we split semantic hairs over, well, a defect makes it into production and a bug is just not in production yet. And I'm like, no, a defect is a defect. And this goes back to that architecture course I took years and years ago, given by iDesign. The owner or the founder of iDesign, Yuval Lowy, is a very strongly opinionated individual, but I agree with all of his opinions, or almost all of his opinions. I haven't found one that I disagree with yet for a good reason. What am I doing? Ha! I got to come over here and give this the focus. And he spent probably a half hour of that course ranting about the terminology for defects or for a problem in our code. And his point of view is if we call it a bug, it sounds like a cute little Pokemon or a little pet that we're going to take home and feed and cuddle with. If it's a defect, it does something psychologically in our minds like, oh, this is serious. We have to take care of this. And this goes, and you can trace it back further in time to Philip B. Crosby's book about quality in manufacturing. It's called Quality is Free. It's out of print, but you can find PDFs here and there on the internet. You can do a Google for that. You can sometimes find hard copies of it inexpensively on Amazon. And it is, in my mind, a very, very important book for anybody working in a process-driven role. And software creation is absolutely process-driven, or it should be process-driven, even when we're just inventing things. Okay, lots of tangents and rabbit holes and stuff like that this morning, but I think it's okay. We're not driving forward like crazy people this morning, trying to get this thing pushed out the door or anything like that. We're trying to get it good. So I want to push all of these changes up to origin. And these are the changes that I made the other day when we added all those appearance options. We've got them debugged. And for the last time in this project, I'm going to go ahead and do a pull request into main. I believe this pull request should be closed. Let's take a peek. All right. Appearance options on species had recent pushes less than a minute ago. Let's do a compare and pull request. Adds more options to NPC appearance and fixes a defect when generating Dragonborn characters. Fixes a defect when certain templates have 0 choices for some options. And I'm not going to do a reviewer. I'm just going to assign myself because this is just me. Labels. This has bugs, enhancements. Yeah, that's all that's in there. Project. We're going to attach this to GM tools. No milestones, no other stuff. Let's create the pull request. And let's spin down here to squash and merge. Oh, let's successfully merging this pull request may close these issues. Let's see which ones are open here. App crashes. And yeah, that's it. Good. Squash and merge. Confirm squash and merge. Delete that branch. Let's come back to our development environment. One last thing to do. I want to get main. And I want to fetch and pull. And we'll get what we just merged in up on the server. I'm going to rebuild. And I'm going to run because I want to verify that the change I just made is in the actual running code base. So yes, I do want to change, select. We're going to go Dragonborn random. We've got our stuff. No, let's not generate. Let's fully randomize a character. We're good. Let's do another one. One more. Nope. And yeah, let's go ahead and do the AI generation just to exercise that code. We've got a curly red-haired halfling who's a gnome. There's a retired fisher person, used to be an entertainer. I almost want to make him into a cook and have like mini Ronald McDonald. That'd be funny. So it's generating. We can look back here. It's doing its thing. Omnipotent knowledge? What? How did that happen? Sage Fisher. Okay, let's see what the heck did it do? Gnome of average height and light skin. He's a gnome? I thought he was a halfling. Oh, no, he's a gnome. light skin, red curly hair that seems to have a life of its own. His eyes sparkle with mirth under his wrinkled brow. Wise beyond his years, but still has the playfulness of an entertainer from his past. He is friendly and enjoys sharing stories, often forgetting himself in tales as he speaks. Omnipotent knowledge lies at Garnock's fingertips, yet he embraces a humble life that allows him to engage with the world around him without losing touch with his roots. Where did the omnipotent knowledge come from? All right. Okay, AI. Surrounded only by fellow gnomes who appreciated his wisdom as much as his humor, this serene existence has honed Garnock into a sage figure revered for both his practical skills and the wealth of knowledge that comes from a life well lived. That's kind of neat. All right. Our test passes. I feel good that our main trunk branch is in good shape. So I can delete the add appearance options branch because all of that work has been incorporated into my main branch. And we can get back to our add contract tests branch. We have one over here already. Nine of 12 says in the chat, the AI went to ghostbusting college. If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. That sounds like the kind of thing a funny little gnome would say. So we've got a feature over here. We've got our options and our step definitions and all that stuff. And now I want to think about build automation. So what's going on over here? That's me doing things earlier today because I updated some workload yesterday and it barfed all over the place. It actually broke my build engine, much to my chagrin. And I had to spend some time this morning figuring that out before I could get into my debugging. But if we go .NET build, it's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. All kinds of stuff. And don't love it. We've got 6 warnings, 0 errors, so that's good. Time elapsed about 10 seconds. Let's take a look at some of the options on .NET Build. I found a really good article on it last night, and do you think I can find it now off the top of my head? Absolutely not. But if I go .NET Build, parameters, and let's take a look at Microsoft Learn .NET Build in the .NET CLI. This is the article I found, actually. And there are ways to really cut down the amount of stuff it does. And that's kind of what I want to do. So description, .NET Build commands, the build project and its dependencies, yeah. We've got all kinds of options we could do. Implicit restore. Yeah, we definitely want to do a restore on any of the packages when we build because those might have changed. Executable or library output. I'm not really that worried about that. We use MS Build. So it supports both parallel and incremental builds. For more information, see incremental builds. I don't care about that right now. .NET Build accepts MS Build options such as P for setting properties or L to define a logger. Okay. Workload manifest downloads, arguments, etc. Architecture, I'm not going to dick with that right now because I don't really need to worry about setting Win64 or x86 or ARM64 or whatever. All build output files from the executed command will go in subfolders under the specified path separated by project. Artifacts output layout. That's something I'm going to need to pay attention to later on. I don't need to worry about it right now. Framework, we're just going to use the default. This disable build servers, I'm not going to mess with that. Force all dependencies to be resolved even if the last restore was successful. Nah. Interactive, no. No dependencies, no, I don't want to do that. No incremental. Forces a clean rebuild of the project's dependency graph. I think I like that option. I definitely want to add no logo. Oops. Ha! So no logo just cuts down on some of the extra text that gets barfed out to the console. So let's do that. Build with no logo. Let's turn down the verbosity. Q for quiet. Output directory, not really concerned about that yet, but I will be soon. Runtime identifier, same thing. Self-contained, no. Source, no. Terminal logger should be used for the build output. Nah. Verbosity, version suffix. Now, I saw something about setting a... What was the search key I used? See, if we do it with just this command line, it does cut down on some of this stuff. Oh, well, I like that. Build succeeded, no logo, verbosity Q. Let's add force. I think force is the one that I saw. Yeah, forces all dependencies to be resolved even if the last restore was successful. I like that. And we do get some warnings, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that output. And it only takes about 5 seconds. So let's think about this. What if we made it build after every commit? If we do it before our commits, that's going to prevent us from checkpointing our changes whenever we want to. We want to be able to commit many, many times throughout a coding session. Like every time we make a significant change to the code, we should commit it to the local repository. Just in case something bad happens and our files, our working files get corrupted, we want to be able to go back to the most recent commit. And it really, it's just like saving your work on another level. So I think preventing ourselves from committing when we've got build errors is a bad idea. But I would like to be notified after committing if there are errors or warnings. But I think no, I think that's a silly thing to do. And the reason I'm thinking through all of this stuff is I learned about Git hooks, that they existed about a week or two ago. And I'm realizing now that those are a concept that it's like a solution looking for a problem. I'm looking for an excuse to experiment with them. And I think I'd actually be better served, A, for the sake of the project, and B, for the sake of learning things that are practical, instead of just, gee whiz, that's neat. I think I want to start setting up a build environment for this project in GitHub. Now, I have a webinar that I'm going to be attending that starts at 11 o'clock sharp, so I'm going to have to cut this morning short. But after that webinar, I'm going to dig into starting to set up some automation up in GitHub rather than on my local development environment. That really feels like the more sane way of doing things. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to add a comment, or I'm going to edit this comment. Instead of digging into this for local development environments, let's prioritize getting some automation on the source control server. That feels like a much better option. Yeah, I like that. So let's save. So we're going to set that up this afternoon, or we're going to learn how and then set it up this afternoon. I need to actually end this stream a couple of minutes early this morning because, as I said, I am attending a webinar that starts at 11 o'clock sharp, and I need to give my head a shake and take care of some biological needs and get some more coffee and feed this stupid monkey that lives on my back real quick. And I will be back at 1 p.m. today right here on Twitch. So I will see you all again very, very soon, later this afternoon, and we're going to dive into some GitHub automations. Until then, take care of yourself.